Welcome back, everyone. This is Ultimate Academy's team presenting ONYX Financial Track. This is lecture number 16 of our series, and today we're starting a new topic, inventory inputs. Without further ado, we'll just get started right away. The first screen that we have is going to be main group details. So this is where we add the main groups. You'll click on add, enter the group's number, name, and foreign name. Alright, then we'll click on save, obviously. Then we will move on to the next screen, which is subgroup. This is where we can add subgroups by clicking on add. And then in group code, you will hit F9 to select the main group that you're gonna be linking this subgroup to. Then you will enter the subgroup number, name, and foreign name. Alright, so there are some additional features in this screen. For example, you can review the items linked to this subgroup, and you can also link new items to this subgroup from this screen. We can go about linking the items with the subgroup either by importing from Excel or through the screen options from the lower section. We can link the item by code or by type, and of course we're linking items, the item here with the subgroup. We'll move on to the next screen, which is subgroup. Same idea, but here we're linking the subgroup with the subgroup. And by the way, after you've linked the subgroup with the subgroup, the system will show you the main group with the that the subgroup is linked to. It's more like a tree. We can view the items linked to this subgroup or link new items also by importing from Excel or through the screen itself. Alright, so all of the rules that we're establishing right now are going to be also applicable for a couple more screens, which are a system group, detail group, and alternative group. Those were the stock groups that we set up by default in ONYX, so you can link the items with. We'll see an example so we would have a clear view of this. If you work in a garment factory, you'll divide the items into raw material and final production, obviously. We'll consider these the main groups, and if we will number these groups, then raw material will be number 1 and final production will be number 2. There are fabrics for the summer and different fabrics for or material for the winter, because garments are seasonal. So we'll say that summer is number 1 and winter is number 2 as subgroups, of course. So now we have main groups and we have subgroups. When we're talking about final production, we can divide it into 3 groups: men, women, and kids. Men is number 1, women number 2, and kids number 3. Let's say we have 2 items, or we have 1 item. We'll just take one example. Let's say we have a winter dress. Let's take a look at how the system will code this winter dress. From the left, it goes 2, 2, 2, 1. So 2, or the first 2, is for the main group, which is final production. The second 2 is for winter, the subgroup. And the third 2 is for women, the subgroup. And 1 is the number of the item itself, considering that it is the first item that we've linked to these groups. So in case we activated the variable include main group code in item code, then the 2 which stands for final production will come up on the winter dress code. But if we deactivate this variable, then it will not be included. Quick reminder, by the way, you can control this variable from the inventory parameter screen. We'll move on to the next screen, items classification. Alright, so we use the screen to classify the items according to the company's planning. For example, we can classify the items into service items, items in the production process, and so on. To add a classification, we click on add, we enter the number of the classification in the relevant field, and in main classification, we add like the parent classification. But if we do not have a parent classification yet, then this is the main classification that we're entering just now. So we will just punch in 0 in the main classification field. Fill in classification name and foreign name, of course. Then we have a very important checkbox, affected by transactions. If you activate it, then this classification will be affected and could be used in the transaction screen. Alright, so then we have main group and item activity. You can use these two fields to link the classification with a group or an activity of your selection. Main group, of course, is the stock group. We can basically add a default pricing percentage for this classification in the default price percent from primary cost. And on the right, you should be able to see the classifications tree. So whenever you add a new classification and you refresh, it will come up on the right. Next screen, warehouse groups. All right, so we use the screen to add warehouse groups so that later on we can link the warehouses within the enterprise with the relevant group. You can create the groups according to your business needs, for example. Let's say, for example, that we have warehouses at a certain location, or, for example, groups for according to the nature of the item, raw material, final production, and so on. So to use the screen, you will click on Add. The number will be filled in automatically. You will enter the name and the foreign name. The screen up next is warehouse details. So here we can add the actual warehouses. You will click on Add. The system fills in the number. And in group code, we have a drop-down menu which will contain all the groups that you've added in the previous screen. Enter the warehouse name and foreign name, warehouse keeper, location. Alright, so after we fill all that in, and in country, you should be able to see all the countries that you've added in the country detail screen. You will select the right one, and the same goes for city, province, and phone number. If we have more than one warehouse that does the exact same job and contains the same items and the same process and everything, then of course we will need to differentiate between all of those warehouses that have similar activities. So on the system, you can differentiate between them by entering a different sequence number for each of those warehouses. Alright, and if the warehouse is the main one, you can check the main warehouse box. Inactive, we know what that one does. As for not for sale, if you check this box, then all the items that are in this warehouse or the items that this warehouse contains will be restricted for sale, and they will not come up on the or in the sales transactions. Then we have warehouse transfer interface account. You will hit F9. The chart of accounts comes up, so the user can select the account that they want to turn into an interface account. Once you select the account, the name of it will show up. As for item activity, that is in case you've already added activities, it will show up here. And default cost center, in the drop-down menu you will find the cost centers that you've added, and you can link this warehouse to a specific cost center, which means that all the transactions in which we select this warehouse will reflect on the cost center that we've selected from this drop-down menu. Alright, so in branch drop-down menu, you will find all the branches that you've added, and of course you can select the branch that you would like to link this warehouse to. As for pricing level, the drop-down menu as well will show you the levels that you've added, and you will select whichever you want to go with for this warehouse. As for default service warehouse, you can check this box if you want to set this warehouse obviously as the default service warehouse. Alright, so the table in this screen is where we can set up our shelves and specify what each shelf is for, like laptops shelf, headsets shelf, and so on. Alright, we'll save and we will move on to the next screen, bin details. We can use this screen to set up and encode the shelves at the warehouse. The table from the previous screen was strictly for the warehouse that we were adding, but in this screen, however, we can select any warehouse that we've added then start adding the shelves for that warehouse. You will click on add, enter the shelf's number, name, foreign name, and then select the warehouse by hitting F9 in the relevant field. So that is everything for this lecture. Thank you so much for watching. Please do not forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You will follow us on Facebook and Instagram as well, and we will see you again in the next lecture.